Yo guys, welcome back to another video. This is going to be the OP9 predictive tier list for the West. We are finally going to be on the same playing field in terms of like the West had the bans happen early for Red Purple Law and NES Lobby. So I'm really interested to see how much will be the same, how much will be different, what decks might kind of take off since the West has been able to see the kind of crazy meta that the OP9 has been over here in the East, and I'm really excited to see what kind of does well and what kind of maybe extra spicy decks that we didn't really use over here might make a mark over in the West. But I'm just gonna go over all the leaders, give you guys my thoughts, and yeah, that's it. So let's jump in and let's get started. For today's video, we're going to talk about what I think, how the OP9 leaders are going to shake things up. So very quickly, I'll just go over the tier list real quick. Basically, tier 1, tier 1.5. Tier 1 is, you're going to see it top 16 of all the regionals, probably like top 8 even. You're going to expect this to win most of the big tournaments. This is what I would expect to see in like a top 16 for a CS over here in Japan. Tier 1.5 is probably like going to be a little bit more outliers, stuff you'll see like popping into the top 16, maybe winning a few events, a few smaller events or something like that. Tier 2 is getting onto the fringe. This is going to be, just like occasionally maybe a really good player can take a deck like this and put it up into a top 16 or something like that. Tier 3 is basically the outlier, like the final outlier, where it's just like maybe it could do something, but just like doesn't seem that good right now. And then I have Spice Rogue. I think normally I do Spice Copium, but I'm just going to start doing Spice Rogue because these are decks that are just like unlikely to do well, but maybe with the right pilot can kind of like show up. And then we got our F for Fallen Heroes. Shout out. Pour one out for RP Law and Sakazuki. Let's just jump in. Let's get started. Let's do this. So what I'm predicting, I'm just going to put Dofi up here at tier 1. And this might be kind of hard because I don't know what's going to be doing well around Dofi until things start. Like the meta for OP9 over here in the East has shifted so much. And even though it's basically settled down for the past couple weeks, and we have like a somewhat kind of like clear, at least data wise, like you could say like what the top like 3 or 4 decks are. There's so many small like minute changes that are happening still within the meta itself where it's like really hard. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave Dofi here at 1.5 and I'm gonna start everything else at tier 1.5, like the other good decks that I think will do well, and then maybe adjust things from there. And this is not saying that Dofi is tier 0 or like S tier or anything like that, because I really don't think he is. I will put other decks up into tier 1, I believe, but just bear with me for a second, and then we'll get to the OP9 leaders a little bit later. So BY Luffy, I still think is tier 1.5. He does have a few hard matchups. He can struggle against Dofi, he can struggle against Shanks, he does struggle very hard against Blackbeard. I have a friend who's a Black Yellow Luffy player, and he said that if the Blackbeard really knows exactly what to do, then it's closer to an 80-20, which I had seen some matches between these two and it didn't seem that bad. I think the thing is like if you tech Raigo and 9 cost Kaido, you stand a shot. The big thing you're gonna see for some of these decks that are like supposed to be very unfavored into Blackbeard is if they are teching properly and matchup, I really do think you can get the matchup closer to like 50-50. But for now, I think he's still really strong. I'm just gonna leave him there. Bonnie, I'm gonna put at 1.5 for now. There were times in Japan where like Bonnie was tier 1, which was really awesome, really fun time. Vegapunk, I'm gonna put at tier 2 for now. Still think he's really strong. Obviously still does well against Dofi, but I think he has a somewhat hard matchup against Shanks. Blackbeard, it's like in OP9, some people and some people I know have like switched to the more aggro version, because I do think aggro beats Blackbeard. I think as long as you draw your 5 cost Luffy's and Nami's, you still beat Doflamingo. But I do think you still struggle into certain decks, and without Katakuri Yamato or 7 cost Linlin, you do struggle into certain matchups. I think it can be kind of weird, kind of difficult to navigate, and then it kind of just depends on the build of your opponent. If they have cards that are gonna make it hard for you, even the aggro build's not gonna do that well. But I do think he's still really strong. I love Vegapunk. But yeah, Nami, I think we'll put in tier 2 for now. Nami is still obviously really strong, but just, Dofi is a nightmare matchup. Well, just like a hard matchup, right? Pretty hard matchup for her. And then Teach is pretty hard too. I don't think this matchup is anything like 80-20 or anything like that, but it's probably like 60-40 in favor for Blackbeard. So yeah, just gonna go off of that. Betty is one of the leaders that I'm really interested to see how well she takes off in the West, because she was like popping off. She was popping off really hard in Japan whenever OP9 first came out, winning like a ton of flagships and stuff, but kind of fell off a little bit. I think just when people kind of figured out the best way to deal with it, and unfortunately just Doflamingo's the better aggro swarm deck still, so it's just a little unfortunate for Betty. Like, if you're gonna play this type of deck, most people are just gonna play Dofi or Ploofy anyways. Hancock gets a special tier 3 kind of like, actually, you know, Hancock will be our first Spice Rogue, because just super recently, some people have been kind of running Hancock. People have played her throughout. Like, she has a good matchup. Obviously, she kind of like destroys Teach. I honestly think better matchup into Teach than Doflamingo does, which says a lot. And I think she can play really well against Shanks, but I do think she still just struggles against like Doflamingo. Some of the other matchups, it's just weird. She's in a weird spot where, like, I don't think she quite, and like Purple Luffy I think is still pretty hard for Hancock. They have to like steal first and then just hope that Ploofy doesn't high roll or anything. So just having a few of those really harder matchups, especially like if you can't beat the best deck in format, you're already starting off at a little bit of a disadvantage. So even if you can beat something like Teach or Shanks, and Shanks I would still say is probably just closer to 50-50, but she's been getting a little bit of spice recognition going on, so I'm gonna put her there. Black Luffy, I don't know, I'm gonna put him here. He is okay and actually does pretty well, and he's just more of a rogue deck at this point right now, especially because a lot of people don't really play him. Most people, if they're gonna play a different mono black, they're gonna go for Smoker in 09, and some people, like Smoker, just got into top 16 at the most recent Hyogo CS, which was really cool to see. That was an insane top 16. Bonnie got top 4, shout out. A lot of leaders we hadn't seen. Bella Betty got a top 16. I think we saw like all of the Luffys, which is really funny. But yeah, Zoro, I'm gonna put in the Spice Rogue. Katakuri, I think we can put him in tier 3. He's just, you know, not anything too crazy. I do think he gets some new support though in OP10, which will be interesting to see. Sanji, I'm just gonna put him at like tier 3. I don't think he's really anything amazing. Decent matchup into stuff like Teach, can probably aggro down a Black Yellow Luffy, but I think he still just loses to a lot of the other top tier decks, and that's just not good enough. Ploofy, I'm gonna put him up here. We'll rearrange this stuff later, but he's really strong, consistent. If you go first and high roll, you can beat any deck. Even if you go second, if you have techs, you know, if you have the 9-cost mom, if you play smart, you're still in a good position. Reiju is gonna go into Spice Rogue for me. I think she actually has like a few like weird decent matchups into some of the top leaders, but I think she's just, it's hard for 4-life leaders in OP9 in my opinion. Moria, I'll put him down here. RP Luffy, really strong. Putting me at the top of tier 2 for now. That could change later. Lucci, I'm gonna put at the top of tier 2. We'll talk about Lucci. Okay, but I'm gonna get to that later. Uta, I'm gonna put as a tier 3. Some of these tier 3 decks are just gonna be like, has a decent matchup into one of the key top meta players, but doesn't have like a good enough matchup into the rest of the decks. Dragon is definitely Spice Rogue for me. Kalgara, I don't even know if he should be on here. I'm actually just gonna, sorry Kalgara, I'm gonna throw you down there. Enel, tier 3, maybe tier 2. Well, we'll see. He obviously beats Blue Dofi. He does well into a good spread of decks, but unfortunately a lot of the top tier decks at the like the current meta are actually hard for him. Like Teach is really hard. It's really hard for him. Ploofy, obviously a notoriously bad matchup for Enel. Bonnie is slightly favored against Enel. Like PYL is like 50-50 at best if the player knows exactly what they're doing. But again, like having a favored matchup against the best deck in format does go far. So we'll see. Foxy, Giga Chad of the format. Giga Chad. Getting going to tier 2 for now. That could change later. Putting Red Ace, I'm actually gonna put in tier 3. Roger builds with Red Ace actually go pretty hard. I know we've had at least one. We might have had multiple flagship wins, I'm not sure, but we did get one. There are some cool aggro builds that you can run. They run like 4 Roger, which is really suiting for Ace. Very nice. A fitting touch, if I may. Smoker. I'm gonna put him up here. I'm gonna put him up here for now. We'll talk about this as we rearrange stuff. I don't want to spend too long talking about things as I'm putting them there. I want to have more time to talk about it after. Red Green Law is definitely gonna be Spice Copium for me. Red Purple Uta, Spice Copium. Yamato is a rogue deck at this point. OP9 is just still really, really rough. Depending on the meta, Yamato is directly tied to how high Teach is in the meta, because Yamato has a pretty good matchup into Blackbeard. So, and like, if Blackbeard and Black Purple Luffy were decks in the meta, Yamato would be tier 1. Like, let's just put it that way, right? Like the 4 life leaders and the decks Yamato can take advantage of are what dictate its position in the meta in this set, in my opinion. And I love Yamato, still my favorite leader. But yeah, I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat things. It's definitely a rogue deck in this meta, in my opinion. Hard to build for, but I think OP10 is gonna change things. I think OP10 is gonna put Yamato much closer onto the outskirts of like a tier 3, tier 2 deck again. Which some of these rogue decks I would consider like tier 3, tier 2. It's just like their specific place in the meta, right? Red Purple Kid is gonna go. It's a very spicy rogue deck. Perona, I think, is gonna be here too. Booyah the Ace, I think, is just kind of here. And then Marco, just because we haven't had the results with him over here, but just with stuff like some of the people topping with him in the West recently in 8.5, I do think there's gonna be more room to cook and grow. So I'm gonna put him at the very top of the spice in my mind. Maybe not really rogue, but he probably will be a little rogue. I mean, honestly, if Sanji's up here, I think Sanji needs to go down here. I'm sorry. I would put it like this, maybe. Because this is my predictions, right? I'm not doing a recap of what happened here in the East. I want to have some different takes going on. All right, so real quickly, the OP9 leaders first, and then fix things, huh? Let's do that. All right, Blackbeard. Blackbeard's weird because he like started tier 3, then went up to tier 2, then went up to like tier 1, and then he's like, I don't know. I think he's settling around tier 1.5. I don't think he's tier 1. I really don't. I do think he's really strong, but when you lose to Dofi, and you do, this matchup is not favored for Blackbeard. In case anyone has ever told you that, it's really not. I promise. It's just hard, right? It's like a Nell. Blackbeard is a deck that's like a Nell. It's like Nami. It's just plays differently than everything else, and it's really good against the decks that it's really good against, but it's pretty bad against the decks that it's bad against, right? Like Bella Betty destroys Teach, Dofi beats Teach. A lot of these decks, even like Lucci, which is a terrible matchup, if they run 9-cost Kaido and they know the matchup well, they can win. I've been practicing a lot of Bonnie builds that have gotten me really good results against Teach, and just learning different ways and like different ways to think about the matchup. He's a very polarizing leader, but I think I'm gonna keep him in tier 1.5. Put him yet, but 1.5 for me. Black Purple Luffy, a leader that I really hoped would kind of take off. I still think there's like Black Purple Luffy is like Gohan from Dragon Ball. It's just like there's so much like latent potential within this leader, and we just haven't gotten the Piccolo that needs to get killed or whatever for him to like pop off. You know what I mean? We need a Krillin on Namek that Frieza can blow up to kind of push our Monkey Man over the edge. But I think there's gonna be, at some point, this deck is gonna be like a tier 1 contender if he gets the right support and the right time, right place. He can be so strong in my mind. Shanks is another one that flip-flopped a lot, and I'm gonna put him up here because Shanks kind of started out like tier 1, fell off, like went all the way down to like tier 2 in terms of like, and just like win percentage on things, and then came back up towards the end of the meta as people rediscovered the Red Hawk builds, running 5-cost Ace to get around Lucci and Blackbeard, and taking in at least 2 Rogers to help with that matchup as well. We're gonna put him up here in tier 1. Buggy, my guy. I'm gonna also, this Buggy, I'm gonna basically assume it's like you have the promo, you have the 7-cost promo Buggy already. That's how I'm gonna treat this, and just hope that works. I don't know when that comes out in the West, but this is like full power Buggy in my mind, okay? This buggy is good against Doflamingo, but he does struggle against a lot of other decks. Like, I mean, I just think like Ploofy's hard for him, Shanks is hard for him. Teach is weird. Teach is a weird matchup. We all thought Buggy would destroy Teach, but it's actually like that much of that's like not really the case. If the Teach player just like uses their leader effect on the right turns, in a weird position, and I'm gonna put him in tier 3 for now. But maybe, I mean, he could go at like the very end of tier 2. To be honest, like we saw him, he got into the top 16 at CS recently. Robin is gonna go to tier 3 for me. She didn't do well for like the longest time, and then kind of just like spiked and did really well in towards the end of the meta. Like, I don't know, people just found some builds that kind of seemed to click. But I think a lot of people in the West love Robin, and a lot of people who probably liked playing yellow and stuff might try her out. I'm not sure exactly where she'll fit in, but let's just get through Lim too. Lim is cool. I don't think many people are going to be trying to play her though. I don't really see her doing anything crazy, so she's gonna go into like the Spice Rogue category for me. All right, we have all of our leaders here. Now let's kind of like talk through a little bit and just rearrange this stuff. I'm actually gonna put Ploofy up here. I think these three are what I'm expecting to kind of see the limelight, at least at the beginning. Things could change. This is kind of our top 3-ish at the moment. The top 2 for me in Japan right now is like Dofi and Shanks. But I think Ploofy is still just kind of underrated, and he has the potential that you can run certain techs and change the list a little bit to make him not so dependent on just going first and hitting Luffy Taro and stuff like that on curve, like on your ramped curve. I do think there are other ways to kind of just like build and play this leader, and he's still really, really strong. Obviously stuff like Gum Gum Giant, 7 cost Sanji, 9 cost Luffy, it's all really, really strong. I'm gonna just take a stab in the dark and say, and I know everyone wants to play Shanks. I know people are itching to play Shanks in OP9, and he's a cool leader. I do like Shanks. He is very straightforward. If you like more, like having more multiple lines of play and stuff, this may not be the leader for you. But if you have just been dying to play red again and you think Shanks is cool, this is definitely a good leader. He's really strong, he's really consistent. Has like about a 50-50 matchup into Dofi, and beats a lot of the other top leaders. Like slightly favored against BYL if you ask me. Pretty favored against Bonnie unless they're teched with 4/9 cost Shanks and know the matchup. Then it's just slightly Shanks in my opinion. I mean, it's kind of like 50-50 or slightly unfavored against Teach. It just depends on how much rush you draw and if you're running the 2 Rogers. Shanks is a deck that very much depends on the build, and a lot of people were running the control version at the start, but it was control and like super rush aggro Shanks, and then it kind of morphed into this like mid-rangey 5 cost ace, but you also run Dragon and Roger and Red Hawk or events and stuff. So he's kind of settled in this weird place, but there's not a lot of room to run like 7 cost Newgate or the Building Snakes, because if you run the full lose to Teach, you lose hard to Lucci, and then I think Dofi can still like just take advantage of you if you don't see like your Newgate on curve or whatever. So it's kind of weird. Well, this will be my top 3. Looking at tier 1.5, I'm gonna put Teach here, I guess. I kind of like this. Teach just like it's the decks he's favored against and loses hard to the decks he doesn't. And when your best deck in the format, in my opinion, is Dofi, it's just hard to put him at tier 1. I don't think I can. Really, really hard leader to play too. Anyone who says Teach is easy and you just like spam Tenkos Teach or whatever, like has never played the leader or like does not know what they're talking about at all. It is really, really hard to play, and you have to know the matchup of what you're playing inside and out so that you know exactly when and what turn to start using leader effects. Do you stop and start again? Do you go the whole game? You have to be able to adapt, because if you think they're playing one build and they're playing a different build, you might have to change your game plan based on that. It's just really, really hard. Teach is super, super hard. Pretty annoying to play against, pretty fun to play as if you're kind of just dominating. Kind of a polarizing leader, like I said before, but to be honest, I'd probably still rather play Teach than something like Lucci. So let's talk. I think I'm going to put him at the top of tier 2. I mean, I'm tempted to put him at tier 1.5 just because I know we got a lot of people who love Lucci in the West who are playing him, because you kind of, you guys had a lot of just BYL and Lucci. That's kind of like the top 2 decks for a while, and then now we got Dofi introduced a little bit as well. If people are playing the Shanks that is teched to beat Black, Lucci will not be up. I just don't think he will, because it's like 50-50 against Dofi or slightly losing depending on their build. 50-50, or I would say with the tech Shanks, it's about 50-50 or even slightly flavored for Shanks. Like, for real, it's kind of crazy how much the techs change the matchup. And about 50-50 for Ploofy. You have a terrible losing matchup against Blackbeard. You have a losing matchup against BYL. And you have a slightly favored matchup against Bonnie. That, to me, like, I cannot put you any higher. I'm sorry. I will give him the benefit of the doubt, because he's still really strong, still an amazingly strong leader, but I can't put him up there. If this is what the meta looks like, Lucci's down here. If things change up here, sure, he could go up. But no, I'm gonna keep him at tier 2, just as a prediction, right? We'll put Red Purple Luffy here. Red Purple Luffy is still really, really strong. Can kind of struggle against Teach. Again, this depends on your build. Doesn't matter what your build is, you're gonna struggle against Bonnie, which is a little... I think you're slightly favored against Shanks, is what most people would say. I think it's pretty 50-50 against Ploofy, though. And then I think it's, you know, I would say it's slightly, just ever so slightly favored against Dofi, Red Purple Luffy. Just because the 6k leader is so strong, and you can kind of get you ramp to your high cost bodies, and then you're able to just control their board. And the 3 life seems scary, but you can really take advantage of some of that stuff. But I'm gonna put him there. I don't think I can put him any higher or any lower. Smoker, I think it's like a kind of spicy little slot here. I do think that in certain metas, like, honestly, Smoker is better than Lucci. I think Smoker is much better against Teach, because you have things like Tashigi that can just trash stuff, and still like slightly favored against Bonnie. Shanks is a little difficult. Dofi is probably a little bit harder than Lucci. Ploofy is also, so it's like, it's just kind of hard, right? The black decks in OP9, it's like, if you try to tech for everything, you're probably gonna lose, so you have to just tech for like a few matchups, and then just hope you don't run into the ones that you're more unfavored for. It's the same with Bonnie. If you tech less for Lucci, you're better into like literally everything else, but then if you hit the Lucci, it's like becomes a very unfavored matchup instead of just like possibly slightly unfavored. But yeah, so he's gonna be here for me. Vegapunk, just as always, like has potentially really strong stuff, is an extremely hard deck to pilot, and really punishing if you don't get stuff off. I'm gonna put him down here. Anel, I think, he's just like a cockroach that just like can adapt and get into Dofi. I'm gonna put him here. Foxy is a Giga Chad, has a decent matchup, is like his favorite against Dofi. Beard, I think he has a rough time into Shanks, even if they're running the aggro Shanks. I think Bonnie just destroys Foxy as well, and I think Ploofy can give him a run for his money too. So because of that, I think it's a little bit hard for him. He just has like one too many unfavored matchups up here at the top. Otherwise, he could be a little bit higher, but I do think a few Giga Chads can make him work. Nami, we're just gonna keep here, and then Buggy gets like the kind of benefit of the doubt up here. This tier 3, I mean, I'm not really gonna keep it like super ordered. you can, again, just take everything with a grain of salt, right? And like some of the ordering could obviously be different. But I think that's it. This is going to be it for my predictions for at least like the first quarter of like OP9 for everyone in the West. What I think is going to be doing really well. Let me know if you would change anything, but please keep it classy in the comments. These are all just my opinions. I'm not a guru. I don't claim to be better than anyone or know more than anyone else. These are just my thoughts, and tier lists are fun, so I wanted to make it. But yeah, let me know what you think, or let me know what you're excited to try out and play in OP9, because in my opinion has been one of, if not the best formats that I've ever played One Piece in, which is kind of crazy, and I'm not saying that lightly. It has been so much fun and so cool to see how everything has changed. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.